širimo znanje, spreminjamo življenja in dogaja se veliko stvari. Tako da upam, da ste dobili elektronsko pošto, mail. Mogel sem ga dvakrat poslati, ker enkrat zgleda, da je nekaj blokiralo. So me ljudje opozorili in potem, če ste dobili dvakrat, se opravičujem. Važno pa je, da smo danes skupaj in da smo se lahko na tak način tudi obvestili, seveda. No, tale predfilm je zelo zanimiv, intriganten, kako so v bistvu začeli iskati ljudi, ki malo več vejo, ki so bili v življenju inovativni, ki so delali nove ideje, pa ne samo nove ideje, ki so tudi ustvarjali vse življenje na nek drug način. Predvsem to, kar je mene pri tem filmu presenetilo, kar nisem vedel iz zgodovine Leonarda da Vincija, da ni bil sprejet v šolo in da se je izobraževal sam. In poglejte, kaj je človek iz sebe sama motivacijsko naredil. Tako da danes, če to primerjamo, vidimo dejansko, kako šolski sistem ubije vso kreativnost, vso osebno raziskovanost, raziskovanje in samo čakaš v tisti klopi, kaj ti bo učitelj, profesor prinesel in potem te vodi z domačimi nalogami. In ti tisto nalogo narediš, ker jo pač moraš narediti. In to so potem stvari, ki ubijajo osebno raziskovanje, kreativnost, mogoče za igro, hrano, spanje, ostane še čas, ali pa za kakšno potepanje in to je to. No, danes bomo naredili en tak dnevni red in sicer pri tem dnevnem redu bom jaz šel, se pravi, nekako skozi, tako kot ponavadi. In sicer, glejte, danes je predvečer 4. februarja, svetovni dan boja proti raku. In jaz sem tukaj dodal zaradi COVID-19 prisilnih cepiv. Mene to ne preseneča, ker redno spremljam svetovno sceno in ena stvar je seveda 17 milijonov umrlih ljudi direktno zaradi cepiva. Druga stvar je pa stranski učinki in pa, kako rečejo, dolgotrajni COVID. Dolgotrajni COVID pa vsi, ki so se cepili, so nekaj dobili v telo in telo dela zdaj po svoje s temi zadevami, s temi učinkovinami, če smem tako reči. Bilo je hudo in posledice so tukaj. In jaz nisem slišal nič kaj dosti. Vsako leto so 3-4 dni že po vseh medijih pompali. 4. februar, svetovni dan, boj proti raku, pa to, pa pa tret. Potem sem šel pa gledati, veste, na Onkološki inštitut v register, v spletno stran sem prišel noter. In veste, kaj me je presenetilo? Najbolj me je presenetilo to, da imajo statistiko urejeno samo do leta 2020. Koliko je bilo bolnikov na onkologiji, koliko je bolanih, koliko jih je umrlo, do 2020. 21, 22, 23, dobro za 24 ne, ampak kje je statistika, kje je NIJZ, kje je Ministrstvo za zdravje, kje so ti podatki? Zakaj jih ni, se človek vpraša. Ali pa zakaj so prikriti, zakaj niso transparentni. In opazil sem, da se na te praznike, ki je v vprašanju naše zdravje, ko so včasih tako na glas vse to, pa vsa ta društva, mislim, da je 12 društev, ki se ukvarjajo z bojem proti raku, vse je tiho, tudi na spletni strani imajo čisto neke druge vsebine, seksualne vsebine, spolne vsebine. Društva, ki bi mogla skrbeti za ozaveščanje, za boj proti raku, niti nimajo današnjega dne označenega. Na Pop TV sem en članek zasledil, pa na RTV radio en podcast, pa mogoče še kakšen članek je in to je pa potem tudi to. Tako da danes nekako se spominjamo vseh tistih ljudi, ki so bili bolni zaradi kakršnih koli razlogov, vzrokov že. Posebej pa ljudje, ki se jim je to s cepivom razvilo, nikomor ne privoščimo, vsem želimo pomagati, se jih spomnimo in tudi družin, ki so v stiski. V zadnjih 2 mesecih sem dnevno slišal od prijateljev in od članov informacijo, a si slišal, ta je umrl, a si slišal, on je umrl. Tako da, glejte, od prijateljev in od družin včasih, v letu 2020, ko so razglasili epidemijo in pandemijo, nikogar nismo slišali, da bi kdo umiral, a ne, razen motorist na cesti, pa še ta je za covidom umrl, ko je imel fizično nesrečo, ne, in tisti, ki je to zapisal, je dobil 15 000 evrov in take stvari, medtem zdaj, ki pa so dejansko posledice, post-covid, posledice dolgega covida, je pa vse tiho in tudi države ne dajo statistike, terajo pa svojo zeleno agendo 2030, ne vem, kot da bi jim dal nekdo 1 milijon evrov. Tako da to, glejte, so hude stvari, a veste, o tem je treba govoriti na glas in takrat, ko politika najbolj meša stvari in ponuja stvari in ko so mediji polni, ne vem, nekih umazanih zgradb, Ministrstva za pravosodje, pa ne vem, teh politikov, ki se grejo medsebojno vojno, pa zdaj politično predvolilno kampanjo za volitve v Evropski parlament. A veste, te stvari se vidi zdaj, s čem in kako ti ljudje živijo. Ne živijo za narod, ne informirajo ljudi, niti ni pravih informacij, pokopališča se širijo, gradbena dovoljenja so iz dneva v dan, tudi se vsa širijo, to če pogledate malo pa pogooglate, boste videli, kje vse, vsaka občina širi pokopališče. Hude stvari so to, družba pa kar tiho. Včasih se počutim, si rečem, kako je to možno. Prazne stvari, polni mediji, po internetu polno nekih, ne vem, novosti, brezveznih stvari, ki nimajo nobene veze z našim življenjem. Dobro, tale predfilm, a ne, je bil meni zanimiv, sem rekel, da bi ga želel z vami podeliti. Tisti, ki ste na novo zdaj prišli, pa tega filma niste videli, a ne, se je avtor spraševal, ali je Leonardo da Vinci dejansko komuniciral z vesoljci, ali pa je bil zgolj vizionar, ki je poskušal recimo deliti svoje poglede v prihodnost, in film je par zanimivih izhodišč dal, 15-17 minut je trajal. Tako da, če si boste to želeli potem pogledati, bom dal na Rumble. In tisti, ki ste se pa priključili, pa ste verjetno videli, oziroma bom tudi potem dal še v posnetku. No, toliko za uvod. Še enkrat vsem prijeten večer želim in gremo na dnevni red. Danes imamo že 149. Zoom srečanje Društva za srečno življenje Belis, članov, ki ste zelo aktivni. Najprej bi se rad vsem članom iz srca zahvalil za spodbude, za podporo, za pisanja, za vsebine, ki jih pošiljate. Včasih je toliko, da ne uspemo vsega takoj pregledati, ampak s časoma, s kakšnim 2, 3, 4, včasih 5 dni zamudo pridem do mailov, ker jih je res veliko sporočil. Ampak danes bomo najprej pregledali, se pravi, zapisnik iz 109, tukaj vidim, da sem pozabil premakniti na 148. zapisnik Društva Belis z dne 27. januar 2023. Tako, no, tisti, ki ste zapisnik prebrali, bi vas zdaj vprašal tlele v tem prostoru in pa seveda vse na Zoomu, ali ima na zapisnik, ki je tukaj na tej povezavi, kjer sta 2 rokci, ko ste ga prebrali, ima kdo kakšno pripombo? Tukaj, ne, v redu. Prav, ugotavljam, da je zapisnik iz 48. srečanja Društva Belis z dne 27. januarja 2024 sprejet. Se vam zahvaljujem in gremo naprej. Za torke ste povabljeni vsak torek, da se srečamo na Zoom portalu, in naslednje srečanje bo 6. februarja, se dobimo ob 19:30 in poklepetamo o različnih temah. Je pa seveda to namenjeno tudi temu, da če imate kakšno konkretno vprašanje, ki vas žuli, je to seveda pravi čas in pravi naslov, da skupno najdemo rešitve, da skupaj podebatiramo, se pogovarjamo. Sicer je neka tematika, da zadeva teče, ampak če imate vmes vprašanja, če imate iz življenja, kakorkoli že, in menite, da bi odgovor koristil tudi še komu drugemu, ste povabljeni, pa tudi če nimate vprašanj, je tudi lepo, da se podružimo, pogovarjamo in da smo skupaj. Najbolj pomembno je to, da smo skupaj. To je v bistvu ta torkov večer. Naslednje, kar bo nocoj, bo tako imenovani, glejte, Skynet je že med nami. Zanimivo je, tale pogovor bo trajal 1 uro, bo zelo informativen za vsakega izmed nas. Jaz si ga bom z veseljem še enkrat pogledal, zaradi tega, ker je toliko informacij notri, da si jih ne morem niti vseh zapomniti, pa sem skozi za mobitelom, za računalnikom, ker te stvari uporabljam, že zaradi dela. Ampak so stvari, ki so mi bile precej nove. Nekatere tudi seveda nedosegljive, ker so narejene izvenserijsko, ampak dobro je vedeti, da take stvari obstajajo. Tako da, gledajte, Skynet nas že opazuje in tematika bo, kako zaščititi osebne podatke na mobitelu. Ampak zdaj, če pogledamo širše, to ne gre samo za podatke na mobitelu, ne gre samo za podatke, ne vem, na tej novi osebni izkaznici, ki so biometrični, ampak tudi na splošno gledano. Ljudje kar hočejo podatke in z našimi podatki tržijo. Na vse konce in na vse kraje. To se pravi, glede tega Skynet nas že opazuje, lejte, lahko ste na internetu, lahko ga raziskujete, vendar bodite pozorni, da vaše podatke prikrijete ali s sinonimom, z imenom, ali pa če imate telefon, da se ime prikrije. Potem lahko delate kar hočete, zaradi tega, ker teh podatkov potem ne morejo povezati z vami. Ampak več o tem bo povedal strokovnjak, ki je razvil tudi prvo medicinsko digitalno datoteko, kjer so bili podatki pacientov noter. In ko je človek videl, kaj s temi podatki počne medicina, država in seveda korporacije, je zapustil podjetje in se je posvetil samo zaveščanju ljudi, normalnih ljudi, kako naj čuvajo in varujejo podatke, ker s temi podatki počnejo marsikaj in marsikomu tudi uničijo življenje. Gremo naprej, potem seveda bom jaz povedal ene par stvari, in sicer sem za nocoj pripravil za vse nas 4 sporočila. Glejte, 2 besedi sta kratki, besedica za in beseda proti. V glavnem se okoli tega vse suče. Za COVID, proti COVID, za cepiva, proti cepivu. Skratka, za tega kandidata na volitvah, za onega kandidata na volitvah. Ampak pomembno pri teh 2 besedah je, kaj in kdo za njima stoji. In vedno se moramo to vprašati. Če rečem da, kaj se zgodi, in če sem proti, tudi moram vedeti, zakaj in kaj se zgodi. Tako da informacije danes so res ključ za uspešen posel, za uspešno življenje, za uspešno družinsko življenje, za uspešne odnose. Zadnjič je prišla k meni ena gospa pa je rekla, joj, sem bila tamle v Škofji Loki, pa ena gospa toliko je imela proti vam za povedati, pa sem jo vprašala, ja pa, a poznate tega? Ja, to pa ne. Je prav, ja, kako pa lahko kar tako? Ja, sem slišala, ne. Vidite, to so te stvari, ogovarjanje, opravljanje, ljudje takole nasedejo, mažejo ime in ljudje, ki nimajo zavesti, ki verjamejo, ne. Ali pa, ki ne vzame telefona in ne pokliče, ali pa fizično ne pride, to so ljudje, kako že Matej Rotovnik reče, brezdušne školjke, ne. Na prvo žogo vse verjame. No, in tukaj, gledajte, bom imel 4 sporočila. Najprej, kaj najstniki sporočajo nam, staršem, in seveda posredno učiteljem. Drugo sporočilo, v drugem sporočilu vam bom povedal, kaj je več kot inteligenca, ker v zadnjem času se zelo veliko govori o umetni inteligenci, pa o inteligenci ljudi. Nihče se pa ne vpraša, a je še kaj več kot inteligenca. Ne? Joj, on je pa, veste, tam, on je pa toliko inteligenten, on je pa toliko pameten. Super, ampak še vedno sedi v tistem biroju in dela, kar mu rečejo. Pa je super inteligenten. Pa sam srednjo šolo ali pa ne vem, ali pa tudi ne vem, ima 5 fakultet, pa še vedno hodi tam tiste 3/4 ure in predava, pa je super inteligenten. Tako da bomo pogledali, kaj je še izza tega več. Tretje sporočilo, v tretjem sporočilu, anomalije, ki jih srečujemo v današnji družbi, niso naključne. Vse so premišljene. In če jih znamo razbrati, znamo si tudi potem življenje urediti. In pa četrto sporočilo, ki bo pa ključno nocoj, skrita zaveza, za katero sploh ne bi smeli vedeti. Naj vas malo firbec matra, predlagam pa, da takrat napnete ušesa, si vzamete mogoče tudi svinčnik papir, pa kakšno misel zapišete. Vkolikor že ne poznate določenih stvari, če pa poznate, potem pa tudi nič hudega, moramo utrditi in ponoviti, zato da prepoznamo situacije. Potem bo predsednica društva Hvala Belis povedala o dragocenosti življenja. Recimo odločen da življenju. No, o tem bo povedala več in po njenem predavanju si bomo pa pogledali na današnji večer, ta predvečer, kjer imamo seveda, praznujemo, spominjamo se vseh teh ljudi, en film, ki pa je komedija, ki ni prav nič smešna, ob 20:30 uri, in sicer stand-up komika doleti resnica o bolezni rak in življenje postane vse prej kot smešno. Njegovo življenje postane zelo, zelo resna komedija, borba na življenje in smrt. In to si bomo nocoj pogledali za zaključek. Če imate mail, potem si lahko malo več o tem tudi preberete, o tej vsebini. Sedaj pa tako predlagam, da v kratkem bomo zdajle pogledali tale film, Skynet nas že opazuje, kako zaščititi osebne podatke na mobitelu. Tako da vam to urico želim čim več informacij in pozorno poslušajte.
If I'm some random person and I want to search for a topic, it changes the Google results when I search to try and influence me. Is that something you've said, yeah?
Yes, that is exactly what it does. And what happens is, at least this company does, they actually have many things that they do. But this one is a specific one they published. This is something that actually stated that they do. They said their goal is to affect the first page results on Google search, depending on what it is you do. So if you, or what it is you believe. So if they find that they want influence to believe, they change the first page results on Google. People ask me, what should I do? Do I need a Google phone? Do I need a VPN? Do I need to do all this? I never get to explain the why, because YouTube doesn't want me to say the why. Maybe your channel will let me say the why. The AI can determine who's unhappy, who's happy. They can actually look at his face and said 57% of the people who looked at this video were unhappy. I mean, that's how far it can go. I'm not telling you to be cybersecurity gurus here. If you can stop them from tracking the identity, that's enough.
Hey everyone, David Bombal back with a very special guest. Rob, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. So just for people who don't know you, you've got a YouTube channel, but perhaps you can just give us a bit of your history. You were telling me a bit offline, you know, where you've come from, a bit of your background and what you're doing on YouTube basically, and what you're teaching on YouTube.
Well, I'm, a very techie kind of person. I started with a tech career as a chief architect. I was just picking Bill Gates' job title, chief architect. So I was a chief architect in a software company founded several companies, and I left that. And 10 years ago, I started going on the internet, and one of the things I did was go on Periscope. So I was on Periscope and did a lot of live streaming there, and that's where I built the following. And then when Periscope was going down, I then went to YouTube. And I've never done videos before, so people get bored with my videos because I don't do a lot of flashy stuff, because I came from the live stream world. And I focus on one thing, and that is privacy. And it comes from a little bit of personal experience, because my actual original career was in medical systems. I designed and developed electronic medical records, or electronic health records as it's called now. And I was one of the inventors of that. And I knew back then that anyone could look at anyone's health records if you're affiliated with any company that does health records. So that was the beginning of my sensibility about, privacy, because I could look up people, important people. I could look up stars. I had clients in Beverly Hills. I could look at stars and see who was getting plastic surgery, as an example. And that kind of bothered me. I said, look at what people can.
It's crazy.
Right. And then the government came in and said, oh, we're going to actually take live data from the doctor's office, and as it's being collected, we're going to intercept it so we can stop the flow of the doctor's orders. So they can actually intercept and say, hey, you can't order that. It's too expensive. Can't order an MRI, or whatever they want to do. So that kind of bothered me, because again, it was like a bureaucrat getting in the middle. And this is probably the beginning of when I already knew that it's going too far. And then when I did my live streaming back in the day, one of the things that I found was the abuse that was happening with platforms like Facebook. So I became the anti-Facebook guy on Periscope.
You got to tell us the name. You've got a domain and everything registered. Sorry, I'm jumping the gun.
Yes, you are jumping the gun at that. Yeah, so I became famous for introducing the word "what the zuck," and I said, zucking this and zucking that, and this is all good on YouTube, no problem. I say this all the time on YouTube. So the algorithm knows that now. I'm completely anti-Facebook guy, because Facebook was the true evil, the basic evil for privacy, more evil than Google, or more evil than even Apple. It's just so evil because of something that we will discuss later on about privacy. So I became the anti-Facebook person. But when I went to YouTube, I found out that if I spoke about Facebook, my views went down.
Oh, wow.
So the videos weren't being fed by the algorithm every time I attacked Facebook. So this is the reason why you don't see much on Facebook on my videos. Maybe they have an agreement. I have no idea. So, I focused on big tech in general and see if there's somebody abusing it. So I consider myself a public servant. What I do is to expose people to what's being done to them by big tech, government, or whoever, affecting their privacy. And that's my goal.
That's great. I mean, it's becoming a problem. I think there's a lot of interest and a lot of worry about it, a lot of people feel that companies and governments are overstepping. I mean, I live in the UK. There's laws in this country that say that all ISPs have to log every website you go to, stuff like that. And a lot of people are saying this is crazy. I mean, this is supposed to be a democracy. And then you're in the US, and I think a lot of people there feel the same way about some stuff.
The Five Eyes, as you know,
yeah,
are more aggressive at taking away our privacy. They're supposed to be the countries protecting us, the Five Eyes, and yet some of them are going to the extreme. One of the extreme countries with privacy is probably Australia, and I think they're getting to be the worst. And then followed by the UK, in my opinion. The UK is probably, as far as government is concerned, and then US well, obviously the US is leading all that. There are factors here that prevent them from making too many moves. So fortunately, there's guys like me here that speak out.
So I want to let's get technical. I've heard you use this term, and obviously other people have as well, about de-Googling a phone. Can you explain why you'd want to do that? I heard you say in other videos and interviews and whatnot about there's 5 things, or problems with using a phone, and then I want to get to like, which is your favorite, Android or iOS? And you've got some interesting views on that as well. So perhaps we can just start with like, what is de-Googling a phone and why you do that and how it affects your life?
So if you actually have a normal, what I call a normie phone, a normie phone in my mind is an iPhone or a standard Google Android. If you have a normie phone, they have so much spyware in there. And if you actually research what the spyware is, for example, on the Google Android, the spyware is called Google Services. If you actually look at the Google Services, if you actually look at the API for Google Services, and there's an it's actually my next video explaining how it's being spoofed, the Google Services, and then you can actually see what the Google Services are. And some of them are very, very invasive. For example, Safety Net is one of the Google service APIs. Safety Net is supposed to be for your protection. Your phone is being protected from a cybersecurity point of view, as far as Google is concerned, by not letting you load certain apps. But to run Safety Net, your phone has to actually report every app that you're using at any moment, the version number, the signature, and all that. On top of that, every click you do that goes to any URL has to be filtered out and sent to Google as part of Safety Net. Well, I mean, it doesn't take any genius to figure out what's happening here. So Google then can track every app you're using already. We know that. Google also knows every click you make. Now, they're in the advertising business, but it goes beyond that because, of course, they're tracking what you're thinking. If they can go to every click, I mean, what do you think is going to happen? So that is one of the specific things that happen on a phone. And that's, if you actually look at the Safety Net API, you will see some of this. And there's so much of that for another example is the geolocation or geofencing and nearby features of the Google API. That's part of the Google services. So in order for, and more than that, what is the other one? Exposure notifications, which has to do with, of course, contact tracing. All of this is part of the Google Services API, which means Google has so much control knowing your location, and the actual technical explanation is that the phone tracks your location 24/7. This is true of iPhones too, by the way. So they can track your location 24/7. And people are like disputing this because they said they can go into settings and turn off location. They don't understand the difference. They don't understand that Google can do anything they want since there's no restriction on that, because they actually replace the system files with their own Google services. Now, why is a de-Google phone different? A de-Google phone removes all those Google services. There's actually nothing Google, not even the notifications. There is no Google at all. You can't even install any Google app. Because there's no Google at all, there is no telemetry, there's no notifications, there's no nothing. You can put notifications back, you can put some of these features back, but through a filter using some other application framework that will replace Google. But without the Google services, first of all, there's immediate benefits. First of all, there is no Google ID. That's one of the worst things that you do on a phone. Everything you do on a phone has a Google ID. Everything you do on an iPhone has an Apple ID. On a de-Google phone, you never log in.
Yeah, so in other words, your email, it's your identity, isn't it? That phone is locked to you as a person to do a credit card, whatnot. Is that right?
And you can't hide that.
So another question, Android or iPhone?
They're both bad. So
you would go like de-Googled Android phone, yeah?
I probably would go Android. The tracking on an iPhone is just so extreme for me. I mean, the one that really bothers me the most is the client-side scanning, where they can actually find out. They can run an algorithm that says, let's find all the phones with nude pictures in them. I mean, goodness, do we need somebody with that capability?
Yeah, I mean, I understood the idea of why they were doing it originally, and I won't mention it here just to keep the YouTube algorithm happy, but the original reason seemed to have good intentions, but the unintended consequences of that were crazy from a privacy point of view. Because like you say, if they could scan all your photos, today they decide this, but tomorrow they could decide to scan for other things, like you said. Yeah.
the justification for doing client-side scanning was that, hey, it's hands off. With the AI does the scanning, so we don't have to touch it. The problem is they could do that right now with iCloud. So why aren't they doing it on iCloud? So the meaning it was a solution looking for a problem. In this case, why introduce such invasive technology when you could have just done it and scanned iCloud? And so the only reason I can think of is they have bigger motives. They wanted to do something else. I have some ideas of what that is from an AI point of view. I think the phone will be able to sense our environment. That's where this is going.
What do you mean by sense the environment?
Because the AI, meaning the camera, the sensors of the phone, can actually observe and look at situations. As an example, why couldn't a phone react and determine that there's a situation of violence? Maybe that's what they're shooting for. It's scary sometimes when I make these kinds of predictions. Most of the time they come true. They actually are thinking of that. So that's the iPhone has that neural network in it. What is the neural network for it? Obviously, it's based on having the phone make its own decisions from AI. By putting a neural network in there and looking at the environment, doing something. Is it really just for facial recognition? No. The way that this client-side scanning can work, it can look at the camera and actually say, oh, I'm observing something that Apple wants me to observe. Not just a face, a behavior. The AI can determine who's unhappy, who's happy. They can actually look at his face. It said 57% of the people who looked at this video were unhappy. They didn't smile. 70% laughed. Come on. I mean, that's how far it can go.
Yeah.
Now, there's another thing that's actually really, really bad with the Google Android or a iPhone, and that's the device identity. And it's based on the IMEI, the International Mobile Equipment Identity. And that is unique to every phone. That's basically the serial number of every phone. Now, they can take that and they can build another ID. On Android, it's called the Android Device ID. And that's built for notifications, which is also a semi-permanent ID. On Apple, there's the advertising ID. There's also a similar advertising ID on Google. So because of these identifiers, what happens is they are using the phone now as a cross-device tracker. So it doesn't matter what device you use. They say to you, oh, you need two-factor authentication, 2FA. So then you say, oh, okay, I guess I'm forced to do 2FA with my phone number. But they don't really care about the phone number anymore. That's not really what they're doing. They want you to load the Google app on the phone because the Google app can see the identifier for the IMEI, for the device IDs, and it can have a certain match that what you do on your computer, even at work, is the same as on your phone, that you are the same person. And they can then use that to track you. And the Google phone doesn't have any of that. There's actually, since Android 10, you cannot see a device ID of any sort, IMEI, phone numbers, all of that, unless you're a system app. Well, on a Google phone, the way that the phone is Google is you're using open source, Android open source project. So I looked at the source code. There is no way to see any of that because that's in the basic permissions. And if you know SE Linux, so SE Linux being the security framework limits every app has to be compiled with SE Linux, and the permissions are baked into the executable. So you can't do anything that's outside of the permission base of SE Linux. And that's how Android is set up. So in the case of a Google phone, no app can come in at the system level that has any rights beyond what is granted by SE Linux. For this reason, it is impossible for an app to gain access to the IMEI and all that, because there are no system apps that are not open source. Everything is open source. And for that reason, one of the things that a phone does, a Google phone does that's really different, is that the phone has no identity. That's probably the #1 feature, no identity. So this is something I teach, people in the privacy business because they don't understand this. They're relating it to cybersecurity. In cybersecurity, you're trying to protect the input and output into the phone. You're trying to actually block anyone seeing anything, which is almost impossible on a phone because there's so much telemetry going on in various aspects. So the goal that I found works best is not to worry about what Google can see in various places, but to take out the identity. If they can't attribute an action to one specific device, one specific identity, the AI cannot make use of it. So you have to go back. I have a data science background because I was doing medical information, collecting medical data. And we were doing AI on that at the time when I was doing that. And we understand that, you got to collect the data. In fact, in medical, you're supposed to strip out the identifier. In Google, Apple world, that's not true. The identifiers are in there. So the solution to not allowing them to get control of us and our ideas and what we really do is to block the identity. So if you, just to put this in a kind of a big picture, there is a project, and I don't want to mention the company name again, because every time I do it, I lose views. So it may be tied to some filter at Google. But Google has a division called Jigsaw. Jigsaw has a partner in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And this partner is tied to collecting information about certain groups and taking action against them. Originally, the original project by this company was to find the Muslim extremists in London. That was the original project. And that was the justification. They said, hey, this is a good project because look what we're doing. We're saving the world from extremists. And nowadays, that same group has now actually have made a map of people, for example, who have anti-vax views in various places in the US. They actually have a map. I looked at the map. I actually posted a video of the map on my, posted a picture of the video of that map where I picked a place like Texas, and you can actually see the dots where people's Google IDs identify the locations of people with anti-vax views. So you can actually count by area how many people have anti-vax views. My goodness, what an invasion of privacy.
Is this something they just have on their website? Is that right?
It was, and then I can't find it anymore. Maybe because they published it and they didn't want to, promote that anymore.
I heard you say, you heard something, they try and filter the results, is that right, on Google to try and influence what you believe. Is it something like that? Is that right?
Well, they do using this Jigsaw.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that even on YouTube, I don't know if what I say causes them to affect, my viewership depending on the topic. Because some of these topics that I talk about don't get any views. I don't really know why.
If I'm some random person and I want to search for a topic, it changes the Google results when I search to try and influence me. Is that something you've said, yeah?
Yes, that is exactly what it does. And what happens is, at least this company does, they actually have many things that they do, but this one is a specific one they published. This is something that actually stated that they do. They said their goal is to affect the first page results on Google search, depending on what it is you do. So if you, or what it is you believe. So if they find that they want to influence your belief, they change the first page results on Google. Snowden, I believe, was the one who said this, that the project that was done in the UK actually went further. They actually changed the internet for certain individuals in London using this algorithm. So I don't know exactly what that means. I technologically, I'm thinking of packet substitution kind of things, something that actually intercepts the packets, because it's a website, you can do that. That's some of the things that, I don't know because it's not published. But the stuff I'm talking about is published. They actually stated that's what they do.
But it's worrying that they can change, sorry to interrupt, they can change the results based on an identifier of who you are and seemingly what you believe, and they want to influence what you believe, right?
Right. So they actually have a database of each one of us. In fact, Google was planning on doing what they call cohorts. They wanted to change the way they track for advertising by assigning every person to a cohort based on what you believe. So you can have you may be in a cohort of conservatives versus liberals versus sports interested people or computer geeks, and so on. They can create as many cohorts as possible for each of us. And then you can belong to 1,000 cohorts. And by doing that, they can identify your grouping and then have the AI judge you in some way. And the judging, of course, as far as the published information is that Google changes their search results, presumably for some target. In theory, they're not doing it for every single person. They're doing it for the target people. So some people are not affected. If they're, in line with what Google wants, they don't do anything. So I've done so many videos, well, not so many because Google or YouTube suppresses it, but I've done several videos and live streams on this topic. And every time I talk about this, because this is the explanation for why you should care about privacy. This is the why. I can never get to the why. People ask me, should I do? Do I need a Google phone? Do I need a VPN? Do I need to do all this? I never get to explain the why because YouTube doesn't want me to say the why. So maybe your channel will let me say the why.
Yeah, I think the whole idea for privacy, I've interviewed other people and, well, it depends. Some people say, what does it matter? As long as I'm not breaking the law, what does it matter? But I suppose the problem is laws change and perceptions change over time. I think a lot of people would prefer not to have a company like Google or the government knowing everything about them. If you've any kind of privacy beliefs, then you don't want to be tracked. So it's a very good why. Are there any other whys that you want to mention?
Well, I mean, it goes beyond simply knowing. I mean, we always, state the example of the book 1984 and the, and that kind of environment. And unfortunately, we're already there. So it's actually even worse than that. The 1984 book said, your TV talks to you. And yeah, we're talking to our phones. So we're doing exactly what the 1984 book is saying, except we're taking it with us. It's not even a fixed TV. In the book 1984, the TV is watching you. Here, your phone is watching you, and you take it everywhere. So it's like in the book 1984, there were cameras everywhere, which is true today, but now it's even worse with the phone.
And where do you see it going? Is it going to just get worse and worse, where perhaps governments or companies just try and control people?
Well, we are already in the situation of the capability of 1984. Actually, we're beyond that now because of the phones. The problem is where it's going, and this is where on my channel I wanted to kind of like move into machine learning and robotics and AI, because that's really where this is going to be used. We see it in the Tesla. We can see what a Tesla can do with the environment, and now we're talking about a machine that can actually not only observe its environment and know what to do, it actually knows who you are. And that's the scary part. Look at a machine that can walk around. Think about a RoboCop. The RoboCop not only knows who is in an environment, they actually know you individually. I say, I know your social media record. I know what you're doing. As you know, even in Australia, and New Zealand, you come into the border, and they can actually look at your phone and go check your social media accounts. That's how far is this going to go? And then we have AI doing that.
So your concern is the governments will control the population like in 1984, but we're already there and it's getting worse, right?
That's correct. It's going to be worse, and it's going to be mechanized, and we don't have a way to stop this. I don't know if you've ever discussed the singularity on your channel. So the guy that invented the concept of singularity was Ray Kurzweil, and he has a book called The Singularity. And the singularity is the day when the computers are smarter than people. And Elon Musk keeps referring to this as something that he fears. That's why, he's saying we need to prepare for this. And guys like Bill Gates said it's fine. Guys like Zuckerberg saying it's fine. But when the singularity comes in, the machine will be smarter than people. And I actually don't know about any limit to what a machine can learn. This is one of my big problems here, is what is the limit to what a machine can learn that can go beyond what people can learn? That's gonna be here. They actually forecast will be here by 2040. The computer's gonna be smarter than people.
So your concern is Skynet, yeah? Skynet will be here. It won't be in the movies, yeah?
I have so many videos on Skynet. They're all viral because they like the word Skynet, but it's scary to me, and I actually believe this. It's not just because of hype. I actually believe we're in a Skynet-like world, which is actually beyond 1984. Because what is in Skynet? Machines controlling us, and this is actually where this can go, where somebody controls the few machines or the machines, and then we're just a subservient population.
Yeah, so you are an advocate for privacy, and everyone should take this seriously, because the problem is the machines are learning so much about us, and they can change our behavior, and we will talk about it in this video. There are companies out there that are trying to influence our behavior, and you just see the slippery slope, right, where it's just going to get more and more control.
So somebody has a vision of the world, and you already know, billionaire this, billionaire that has some vision of the world, and they're changing it to their vision because they have the money. At what point do we give up our freedoms and say, well, we want to have a choice rather than have the billionaires make the choice? This is what worries me, because whoever has the billions, of course, can control the machines. So the problem is, if you give so much information to anyone, as you provide a government, a private company, you really put yourself in danger to be manipulated, because that is so much power to grant any person. And, Apple, for example, being the largest corporation on earth. And people actually believe when Apple says, oh, privacy company.
You serious?
I laugh at that, and I was like, yeah, the privacy company that does more tracking than any other phone, and yet you're the privacy company. Oh, but we don't sell your data. Okay, that's true. We don't have any proof that they sell their data, but there's proof that they've been sharing their data with government, because Snowden showed that. They're part of Muscular, Prism, all these programs. They were sharing their data.
I think the problem is, like any company, if it's based in a jurisdiction like the US, or jurisdiction like the UK, or whatever, if there's a court order, they have no choice but to give over the data. And that's apart from, like, saying, even if they're not being malicious, it's like the governments could force a company to give over data. And I think that's another concern people might have.
Well, that's the government side, and I agree with you. I don't have a choice either. If the government asks me to give data, I have to give data. My solution is to not collect the data. So my websites don't have IP addresses. I don't log it. If somebody asks me for data, I have no data to give. So many platforms do that, right? My VPNs don't track IP address. I don't have a log for it. But Apple, on the other hand, collects all the data. They even have client-side scanning that can check the content of your phone.
Yeah, there was a big uproar about that.
Yeah, and people were saying, "Show me proof." Apple stated already. Show me proof that they're going to use that in a bad way. It's like, even if they weren't willing to actually do it, like you said, the government can require them because they have the feature. They have the feature for tracking your phone 24/7. And why is that? This is something I discovered on iPhones long ago, and that is, your Find My Phone is actually not attached to your Apple ID. Find My Phone is actually attached to your phone. So they can do a Find My Phone on any phone, even if it's still in the store, before anyone's ever used it. When you go into the store and say, I'm going to activate Find My Phone, all you're doing is associating yourself with the serial number of the phone. They're collecting it all the time. It's actually, built into the OS. And that is extremely bothersome, because it means the tracking, just like an AirTag, is continuous.
I mean, Snowden's a good example of, just what was possible even years ago. And I mean, like, what could they do today? Yeah.
I didn't know about what Apple was doing. So I said, let me do a video, because I was asked a question. Can your phone track you when the phone is off? So that was the question I raised. Now, without any background on what companies were doing, I actually just did a kind of a reverse engineering of the problem. I said, who would do that? Why would they want to do that? And can it be done? So I theorized. I said that technology could use Bluetooth Low Energy, BLE. And there's already an Apple network that can do BLE, so that would work right there. So I went into this, what benefit it might be for a company to do this. I said, well, Apple might use that because they can claim they can find your phone if it's stolen.
Yeah.
So that released the video. The video actually did not, this was last year's video. The video was not based on any knowledge of what actually was being done by Apple. And I found out that 14.5 had that feature. They actually put it in. And the feature was that when your phone is off, it turns into an AirTag. It's like, this is the kind of stuff I got to deal with. Is I theorize what might happen based on the technology they have. And in my case, all I do is look at the technology and say, how can that be abused? And often, actually most of the time, I'm correct. If I say, can that be abused? And they do. So that, in that case, Apple found a way to do that.
So I want to go back to the problems with having a phone that's tied to your identity. I mean, you said, okay, the first issue is phones have your real identity, so it's tied to you, which means if you've got an Apple, as an example, iPhone or an Android phone, wherever you go, you're being tracked 24/7, and it's tied back to you as an individual. So a government organization or a company can track you. I mean, Google can track you, Apple can track you. Every device has a fingerprint. That's the IMEI number, is that right?
Right.
And you mentioned like contact tracing. I mean, that became a big thing during COVID, but it just showed the capability, right?
So that is based on the technology called BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy, which I have in several videos, where I showed this new technology, because Bluetooth, we all have Bluetooth. We already know Bluetooth for many, many years. But using the same hardware, they were able to convert Bluetooth into a long distance tracker. If you're a hacker type, you know that your Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth emits the MAC address. You know, it announces the MAC address on the airwaves. And if you have, the proper radio that can intercept that, you can intercept that layer of TCP/IP, learn the MAC address, and do many things to do with that MAC address. But if you stop just at the MAC address collection, the Bluetooth is announcing a unique identifier with the MAC address. Well, they use that because now Bluetooth and Wi-Fi too, but Bluetooth is closer. So you can actually ascertain that you're actually closer. But Bluetooth BLE now works within a range of 200 feet. So you can actually, now this is worse, Bluetooth can actually be directional. It not only knows how far you are, it can say you're within 2 feet, 6 feet. It actually has a compass heading that says you're on the left side of this person. Now, Wi-Fi can't do that. Wi-Fi location tracking uses Wi-Fi triangulation, which is accurate to 6 feet. BLE, or Bluetooth, used in this way, can actually point. That's why AirTag uses Bluetooth Low Energy. So unfortunately, Bluetooth Low Energy, or BLE, was software only. So there was no hardware change. So if you have a Bluetooth 4.2 and above, you already have this active. So they were able to turn this on the phones. And one of the advantages of Bluetooth Low Energy is that it did not use a lot of power. You can actually use it with minimal power. And even with a small battery, you can power BLE for a year because it's pulses. If you're sending information in milliseconds, you're not using that much power. So they were able to use this then to get location, and they actually built it into the OS. So it's built into iOS in 13 point whatever, and then they built into Android also during that time in 2021. So if you, or 2020, sorry. So in 2020, they added these features to the OSs. And that bothered me already back then. Now, fortunately, people were smart enough, they didn't go install contact tracing apps on their phones. It doesn't stop the capability from being there. The apps we install is basically for us to feel like we have control over it. But in theory, how do we know what's in the OS? How do we know what's in Google services? How do we know if Google can't collect it? They can say, well, we're not doing anything with it. But in order for it to work, they're collecting it. This is what worries me about these companies. What do they actually do?
You mentioned the problem with, was it the Ring doorbells and the Alexas? Can you explain that? Because it's the same kind of issue, is that right?
This is Amazon now. So it's a little different tech problem, because Amazon itself normally is not something that we worry about, because they don't sell us the phones. They don't make the phones. We're not being tracked from the phone side. We're being tracked from our Amazon purchases, maybe. We're not tracked in any other way. But what we don't know is that Amazon is one of the largest government contractors. In fact, they provide, the back-end services in the Amazon government cloud. They run most of the internet for the intelligence agencies. So they are, the main part of the infrastructure, computer infrastructure for government. And what they did was they actually promoted this. They said, hey, people, promote Ring. Government agencies, law enforcement, promote Ring as your preferred camera. And what we will do is give you access to the videos. So Ring, if you're doing Ring, you're actually collecting all the videos, putting it into Amazon, and basically you're being facially recognized, and they can, see what you're doing in your house by putting the camera out there. So in fact, how do I even walk in my neighborhood? If I walk in my neighborhood, somebody's Ring camera is going to capture my face and do that. There's a hack, by the way. I should make a video about that. But you should know how to do this. You can just block the Wi-Fi when you're walking by. Block the Wi-Fi, and so that the Wi-Fi don't transmit anything while you're walking there. I mean, that's a very common hack.
Yeah, so I think you were saying is the Ring cameras and the Alexas have this BLE thing, and they created a network. Is that right?
Right. So this is the actual, beyond just what Ring and Alexa does. It's already bad that Alexa can collect all your voices and can listen to you. What they did was build the sidewalk network, which can actually transmit data to Amazon from anywhere using the network of Ring cameras and Amazon Echoes, which probably a good chunk of people have an Amazon Echo, and they can transmit at a fairly good range. So in theory, every metropolitan area is covered by Amazon Echo and Alexa and Ring. And so now we have a network that's encrypted, that's outside of the internet, that they can use for anything, and they can basically take the surveillance from a Ring camera and report it even outside of the internet, which of course Apple also does with the Apple Mesh Network. And these are like scary technologies, because what can they use it for? They can bypass the internet, so they can do things without a trace.
I understand the concern. These big companies know so much about us. I mean, there's so many stories where people will say they search for some product or they mention some product, and then suddenly they get ads for that product or something similar. It's a huge invasion of privacy. So how do you stop it? So how do you de-Google a phone, as an example? I believe there are multiple ways to do it, and you recommend one of the ways. Is that right?
Yeah, there's many ways to do it, but the basic way is to have a phone that either does not have any Google, or to convert an Android into a Android open source project phone. You have to reflash the phone. Back in the day, several years ago, I was promoting the use of Linux phones. Unfortunately, we can't find hardware that actually works too well with a Linux phone today. The one that I have is a Pine phone. I'm very supportive of that platform, but the technology just isn't there. Like, for example, the power management is not there. The phone doesn't work completely when it comes to calling. There's some limitations, and the power lasts only like 8 hours. It doesn't last a whole day. So there's some limitations. That's why I cannot recommend them. So I'm not necessarily pushing any particular thing, as long as I know it's going to run. So what I've been recommending is using AOSP, or Android Open Source Project. And I actually made my own. I made my own phone. So I have this one here. This is a Brax 2 phone, Brax 2 OS. So we made our own phone using Android Open Source Project. I also take pixels, and I offer service in my company where we can flash pixels for you. And so we flash the pixels. Either you buy one from us or you bring your own, and we flash your pixels using Lineage OS, and that's a service we offer. Now, one of the things that one of the reasons why I make these choices about these OSs, because there's many of them, is that I've chosen the one that the average person will have the least amount of problem with. Some of the OSs that are used are very restrictive. You can't run any kind of app that's from Google Play, for example. And I find that that will cause more rejection from my followers, which a lot of them are not that techy. So I tend to go with the kind of a middle of the road solution. In this case, I use Lineage OS for the pixels. But the Brax OS is something that we control, so we actually work on the OS ourselves. And I have a dev team that does the work on Brax OS.
Is that different to Lineage OS then?
Yes, it is completely different. Yeah.
You flash the phone and put your own operating system on, or another option would be to use Lineage OS to flash the phone. Yeah.
And there's other ones. For example, there's Calyx OS and Graphene and so on.
Yeah.
So there's other options. I don't necessarily push others because I got to support them. And if I have to support it, people will complain and they say, well, why can't I do X? Why can't I do Y? And so I've made my choices of something that's consistent for me. And it's not perfect. Some people claim that they're not perfect because there's still some communications with Google. For example, notifications. If you do notifications, you have to communicate with Google. When you go to any website, there's a tracker. When you run any app, there's a tracker. Well, there's a tracker just because you have notifications, for example. Well, how do you escape that? For standard user, there's no escape from a tracker. I'm not even sure you can ever escape from a tracker because of browser fingerprinting. The solution is don't let them get the identity. They can track you all you want, but if they don't know who you are, it's basically like wearing a mask. The Google phone is a solution where it's as close as possible to a good regular phone, but you're wearing a mask.
So let me see if I get this right. You get like an Android phone, but you flash it with Kali Linux or Graphene OS or Brax OS or Lineage OS. So you're flashing the device. Then you don't have to have an account that's tied to that device. But what about apps? So how do you get apps? You see, that's always the concern. Apps like
it's not just flashing Lineage OS. You have to make sure that you do not install the Google services, which is called GApps or GApps. So you don't install Google because the standard install for a standard Google phone is you install AOSP and then you overlay Google on it. So you skip that step. So that's that.
So you wouldn't get Gmail as an example, yeah.
Right. So some of these OSs that you mentioned will not allow you to install, or they don't provide you with any methodology to run any other kind of app outside of the apps that they say are safe. And the main safe source of apps on the Google phone is an open source store called F-Droid. F-Droid apps are secure because, are private and secure because they do not have anything Google on them. There's no telemetry. So that's fine. Unfortunately, they're not your regular apps. For example, how do you get Zoom? How do you get Spotify? How do you get Kindle? How do you, Amazon? Some of these, typical stuff you cannot run. So how do you do that? Well, that's why I went with the more moderate solution. And the solution is that you install a spoofer, a store spoofer and a Google services spoofer. And the store spoofer is called Aurora Store. So that's an open source project, Aurora Store. And the Google services spoofer is called Micro G. So I always install Micro G and Aurora Store on the Google phones. So if you have those two, you can pretty much go to the Google Play Store equivalent. That's Aurora Store is actually taking the apps from the Google Play Store without an identity. It's an anonymous account. And then it's able to download the files. And then the apps, when they run, they think they're running Google services, because what happens is the Google services files, they're actually named com.google.android.gsm. So it actually has a Google name. Micro G intercepts that because that file is actually Micro G. And the apps think Google services is on there. But in reality, many of the functions are just stub functions, meaning they call the function and they don't return an error. So they say, oh, Google services is there. So they say, oh, geolocation or geofencing. It's geofencing here. They make a call. It doesn't give an error. So they said, okay, it's running. So that's how you get apps to work. Now, Micro G, the one that spoofs the Google services, has the capability for actually handling notifications. So that's truly Google. So it actually processes notifications through Google, comes back to Micro G, and without your identity. And notifications is the main one that continues to work even with a Google phone. But not all apps work on a Google phone. For example, you can't have Gmail, YouTube. You can't have any of that. You got to find substitutes, which there are. You can't run anything that requires payments because there's no wallet. Other than that, believe it or not, 90% of the apps work.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a toss-up between like how private do you want to be and like inconvenience, like security, inconvenience versus security. What are you going to go for? I mean, if you want total security, you don't plug your computer into any power outlet or into the internet. You just have it off and put it in a block of concrete. It's very secure, but it's not going to be very usable. And it sounds like what you've done is with BraxOS, you're trying to make a sort of middle ground for most, especially non-techie people, is that right? Because some people are not going to want to go through all the hassle of buying a phone and flashing it. A lot of this audience will, but some people might not. And then they can just buy a phone from you that's pre-flashed, is that right?
Right. So yeah, the people who come to me are, I mean, to buy those phones are the ones that do not want to invest time doing that. And some of them are techie too. I mean, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a non-techie to buy a Brax phone, because these phones are very, they're inexpensive. So they can buy one if they want. Again, I found out, and it took me a lot of time to go, study this and understand the issue. Since I cannot fight Google and Facebook and Apple, they're too big to fight. They're tracking too many things. There's no way. IP addresses, MAC addresses, who knows what else they can track. If you stop them from collecting identity, a lot of their data science stuff stops because the AI doesn't work without a way to file the data. So they know what you watch on YouTube, but if they can't file it to an account, I mean, what do they know? Just imagine if your subscribers, and you have a lot of subscribers, what if they did not have a Google ID? It would be hard to figure out who your market is, wouldn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Like we utilize the analytics, Google Analytics, from our channels, and we can see the age group, the demographics, and what are their other interests and so on.
Browser they use. Yeah, it's amazing how much data we as just YouTube creators get.
Probably in my case, my Google Analytics is not as accurate because we already know that people hide stuff from Google. For example, according to Google Analytics, my subscribers are 90% male. Well, I know that's false because I can see the live stream, and I know many of those people, and proportionally it's definitely closer to half than it is to 90%.
But let me ask you some quick fire questions. Which browser do you recommend? So on a computer, which browser would you use?
All
of them, because you're saying you're hiding your identity, is that right? You wouldn't mind using Chrome?
I have a very specific program. For anything that I'm going to do Google login with, I use Chrome. So if I'm going to use YouTube, I'm on Chrome. If I'm going to use Gmail, Google search, whatever, I'm going to use, well, I don't use Google search, but I'm on Chrome. Now, you might say, well, how is that good? Well, I have no choice. I'm a YouTube creator, so I got to be on YouTube. I mean, on Google with a Google ID. But what I do is I do not do anything that's not Google on Chrome. I do not ever go into any website that I don't want Google to see. If I'm going to do something on Chrome that I want Google to see, I'll do it on Chrome. Otherwise, I don't do it. Actually, on the top of my Chrome, I have my favorites, and I have a limited list of where will go to on Chrome. Now, if I need to go on YouTube without a Google ID, I have a second browser. For me, my second browser is Brave. And the reason I use Brave is Brave automatically deletes cookies when you exit, so it's better for that. And so when I go to YouTube, for example, and I can watch, let's say, videos that I don't want YouTube to see me doing on my account. So I go on that on the Brave, and then when I get done, it's gone. I never log in. Never log into Google on Brave. Then I have a third browser. Now, again, my choice of browsers past Chrome are completely up to you. I'm using Linux, so on Linux I'm using Chromium as my third browser. So it's up to you. You use whatever you want. I don't really care. So you just need a lot of browsers. So at least 3. So on my third browser, which is Chromium, that's where I do everything else. Now, the advantage of that is that there's no crossover of information because Google cannot see what I do on Chromium. It's impossible. So it can't, there's no connection because I never log in to Chromium. So there's no connection. There's no 2FA, nothing that connects Chrome to Chromium. So I'll go to any website, Amazon, eBay, whatever, news sites. I'll do it on Chrome. I go to my app, Braxme. I do it on Chromium. And this is a technique I invented many years back. I was talking about it on social media close to 10 years ago, and I called it browser isolation. And by doing this, it stops the importance of browser fingerprinting and all of these tracking things because they can't track you without an identity. And the identity in this case is the Google ID. If you can stop the Google ID, then whatever you do, they can track, but they don't know who it is.
So you use Chrome for like the stuff that you want Google to know about, like go to YouTube. And then you use Brave for like general surfing. Did I understand that right? And then for private stuff, you use Chromium, or did I misunderstand that?
I use Brave for Google not logged in. So I would never log into Gmail on Brave. But if I needed to go to YouTube and do a search on, how to fix my drain, and I wanted to not let Google know that or YouTube know that, I would go to Brave. But there's certain topics that can profile you, and I chose not to allow Google to know which side I'm on certain things, for example, politics.
Then that's when you use Chromium or like Firefox or something else, yeah?
That's what I use Brave for.
So then why do you use, why the third one?
Sorry, I
The
didn't get that one. The third one
has no connection with Google, never touches Google. I never go to YouTube, never go to anything Google on the third browser. The reason is the trackers for Google Analytics are on each website, as you know. Every website is Google Analytics, has a Google ID. The moment they see a Google ID, then they're all connected. So you got to stop them from ever seeing a Google ID.
So you use your third browser to only go to specific websites that don't have Google Analytics.
Any website has Google Analytics, so I know that. But the third website, the third browser has no experience with Google. Anything that could log me in, never.
So Chrome is where you have like a logged in profile to Facebook and YouTube. Brave is like your private browser window, but you're using a separate browser like your private browser window. And that's for like YouTube searches as if you're doing a private browser window. And the third one is where you do everything else. I suppose the concern is, can't Google track you or Facebook track you anyway on your third browser because like Google Analytics and stuff and Facebook tracking gets installed on lots of websites.
They are tracking you, but again, they don't have no identity, so they can't connect it to a Google ID. There's no way, because you've never been on Google on the third browser. If you make a mistake, clear cookies, start again. It's not the end of the world. Just clear cookies, start again. Every time you clear cookies, all of that resets anyway. So on the third browser, I know Google's tracking that. I know that because every website is Google Analytics.
Exactly, yeah.
But they can't. They don't know anything. I mean, they don't know who it is. It could be, and I use a VPN too. So my third browser could look like anybody else's browser.
And do you use Linux as your operating system, your main operating system? You don't use Mac or Windows, yeah?
Well, I'm a developer, so I have to use all. But my my primary one is Linux. So some computers are dedicated for certain purposes. Like I have a video editing one that's like this computer here.
Yeah.
And this is running Windows because I got to run at Adobe Premiere Pro.
Yeah.
But my normal use computer is Linux. I'm using Pop OS.
So your three browsers are running on Pop OS. That's where you do like your surfing and your internet stuff, and then like your video editing. Because this is always I like Mac just for that reason. Because Mac is like to me the halfway between like Linux and Windows. It gives you the ability to run editing applications, but you know, it has some more security. It's more like Linux in many ways than Windows would be. So that's interesting. Sorry, go on.
There's no tracking, obviously, that I worry about on Windows, since I'm only using it for editing. My main activities are on Linux.
So what you're doing is, like, rather than using virtual machines, you're using separate computers for different use cases. Yeah.
Right. Unfortunately, because of Adobe Premiere Pro and stuff like that, you can't do virtual machines. You know, they're not suited for that. So the one thing that if anything, the main thing that I do is I don't rely on the phone. You know, I try to, you know, I try to bring a computer with me all the time, and my phone is just for emergency stuff, and I try not to do too much on the phone, and I use a computer.
Which search engine do you use?
I use Start Page. In fact, it's pre-installed on my phones.
So you use that on your phone and your laptop, yeah, or your computer, yeah?
Well, I used to use DuckDuckGo, and then
but there's controversy about them,
controversy about that. Start Page has their own controversy at the time, but I am in contact with the Start Page people, and they seem to be on the up and up.
What about the Brave search engine? Sorry to interrupt.
So my phone here is running a Brave browser.
Would you use a Brave search engine though?
They're not that good, so that's a problem.
You prefer Start Page, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to that. Unfortunately, DuckDuckGo was the only browser you can find on F-Droid that was robust enough. There may be some smaller browsers that you can use, but only on F-Droid, I didn't have a choice. And so Brave is actually not from F-Droid, which I didn't like to do, but I don't have a choice right now with the controversy.
Do you have a VPN on the whole time, or is that just when you're using your third browser?
One of the things I promote is the use of a VPN router. So for example, my house is 100% on a VPN router. For that reason, I don't even have to worry about anything VPN-wise, because the VPN router is taking care of that. I don't think it's necessary to use a VPN on cell data. You can hide stuff from the carrier, but most things are TLS nowadays. So I'm not sure it's as essential to prevent tracking on cell data, even though I might turn on the VPN because I have a Brax router everywhere I go. I mean, my VPN router, which is not just the brand name. I don't think about it anymore, but I don't necessarily recommend that you worry about the VPN if you don't want to when you're not at home.
So in other words, the reason to get a VPN router is that it's just easier. You've got one device, all your devices at home are getting their traffic routed through that VPN. You have your own VPN solution, but I mean, otherwise like Proton VPN would be an example, right?
So, and you can use any VPN router. I mean, there are companies that sell VPN routers. Mine was just a inexpensive VPN router because most VPN routers are more expensive. The problem is I based my router on a Raspberry Pi, and you can't buy one now.
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah.
So I don't have a choice. So you can find something else right now because I can't sell mine because I don't have any stock.
It's mad. I mean, you having to buy Raspberry Pis off eBay and stuff like that. It's crazy how expensive they've got. Would you ever let them put a chip in your brain, or like connect your brain to the machines like neural net and these ideas that people are pushing? Because it sounds like we already have a chip on us, don't we, with a phone? Some people, I think Elon Musk said it. Yeah, and you've said that as well. Is that right? We're already chipped. We just got a phone, right?
Well, Elon Musk's idea is that we have a tool to fight the AI by having our own AI that we control. That's what more of what Elon is trying to do. He wants to enhance our capability to fight the AI by having our own AI.
Companies can know so much about us because we've got a chip, not in an implant, even though some people are doing that, but it's basically carried on us all the time.
Right. It's almost like society is pressing us to always use the phone. We can't even go to a restaurant
Torej, jaz upam, da ste zdajle skozi to prezentacijo opazili, kako si velike firme želijo našo identiteto, povezati dogodke z osebo. Kako težko se je znebiti v bistvu že, ko kupiš napravo, identitete. Človek, ki je sedaj govoril, se vse življenje ukvarja s telefoni, z računalniki, z operacijskimi sistemi. In če ste pozorno poslušali, je povedal tudi, da je inovator in je naredil tole medicinsko kartoteko in ne vem kaj vse, ampak ko je videl, kaj se počne z osebnimi podatki, evo, se trudi zaščititi ne samo samega sebe, odprl celo podjetje, pomaga ljudem in ozavešča. Mislim, da je marsikomu dal ta video prispevek, če ne drugega, vsaj za razmisliti, komu in kdaj damo osebne podatke, da danes je to suho zlato. To, kar je včasih so bili zlati delci v pesku, ki so jih kopali, a ne, v rudnikih zlata, to so danes osebni podatki in z nami tržijo. Toliko o tem.